Hello and welcome to episode 9 of
The Complete Charting Guide.
It is recommended you watch episode 7, The Fundamentals of Placing Notes, before watching this one. I'm having problems with my equipment, so I want to get this done as quickly as possible so I don't have to deal with my malfunctioning preamp right now. Alright, make sure you have your sustain gap turned on, which you can find in Options, Settings, Editor, and right here, the sustain gap. Set it to time-based, and I go over what kind of times you're going to want for this in the Moonscraper guide, which is episode 3. But if you don't care that much, you can just set it to 70, which is what I have, and it'll work. Alright, so if you have a note, or you have a gem placed down, you can right-click on it, which I'm done now, and then you can drag it, which will create a sustain. And notice how it is snapping to my step size, so if I set it to 1/4, I'm very limited to where I can place it. If I set it to really high, I'm super precise. You do not want to set it that high though. Usually I wouldn't go more than what normal step size is for that song that you've been using. If you drag your sustain up to another gem, it will have this space between it, which means that your sustain gap is working. If it is not doing that, or it's just going past it, then you probably accidentally turned extended sustains on, and you can just hit E to toggle that off, and then your sustain gaps will be there. And I'll be going over extended sustains in my advanced sustains video. The final rule about sustains is you do not want very short sustains. The general rule is under 200 milliseconds is bad. Anything shorter than up to this note is too short. Like this sustain is too short. I would say this one's too short as well. The player doesn't have time to whammy it, and it just makes the chart look more cluttered without actually adding anything. So with all of that in mind, let's do this basic example, which I quickly made in Reaper. Pretty simple. I'll be going over wrapping with it again, just to keep on reinforcing how to do wrapping, and I think I'll do that in most of the next videos. So maybe like this. Doo-doo. Doo-doo, doo-doo-doo. Alright, so now there's a problem here with the wrapping. The problem is that this orange and blue are way higher than all of these oranges and blues. So if it's possible, I would like these to not go as high. So I still want to preserve this shape, maybe just move it around somewhere. So I'm thinking I want this to be wrapped somehow. So I'm looking at a section of 2 plus 3 or 3 plus 2. Let's try 3 plus 2 first. Let's drag all this down. I don't like this actually as much because this looks like it should be doo-doo-doo. But it's actually doo-doo-doo. So this, I would like to have it yellow if it's possible. And it is if I do 2 plus 3. So that looks much better. Alright, so I think that's acceptable for the first half. Yeah, then this orange, which is way higher than everything else, stands out more. I like that. I'd like this to start on red if it's possible, because it starts higher than the beginning did. Yeah. Is that the last note? Yeah, so it is possible. That's pretty good. And now I think that's good wrapping. And let's look at the sustains. So all of these notes are very musical terms. It's called legato, where they're all very connected, very held out in long notes. So you might be tempted to put, whoops, I have to excite this. You might be tempted to put sustains between all of these, but these are way too short. I would not recommend putting sustains on all these short notes. This one you could probably put a sustain on though. These ones are obviously long enough for a sustain. So is this one, and obviously the last one. And then you have this one. I'd say it is long enough still. Now there is one final thing I wanted to talk about. These sustains all have their sustain gap, right? But the final one does not have a sustain gap because there's no note next to it. So this is personal preference. Some people like to do it, some people don't. You can put a note down and then delete that note, and you will have a sustain gap right here, even though there's no note next to it. So that's just personal preference, but if that's your style, go ahead and do it. Aside from that, there's not really much to talk about when it comes to sustains. Just don't make them too short. Make sure your sustain gap is on, and don't forget to turn your extended sustains off. That's it for this video. Next time, I will be going over naturals, hopos, and taps, which will be a lot more complicated than this one. Until then, happy charting.